My husband is an executive at a well-known company. Someone like you, a poor high school graduate, wouldn't stand a chance.
Alex next to me heard that and whispered to me,
Cheryl's husband is the sales manager at that famous Royal Insurance.
I was quite surprised by these words. Your husband is the sales manager at Royal Insurance, but the name is...
Oh, do you know my husband? My current last name isn't Martin, you know. I went by Martin at the reunion to avoid confusion, but now my surname is Green. Does that match the sales manager's name you know?
Finally, I understood everything. Life is really interesting. It's full of unexpected events. As I was marveling at fate's twist, an email arrived on my phone at just that moment. I was even more surprised when I saw the email. I can't believe I got this email at this time. Now I can get revenge on Cheryl. When Cheryl heard me talking to myself, she looked at me doubtfully. I told her, "Too bad. Tomorrow's the deadline for the $10 million contract."
What?
Cheryl looked stunned and confused. Oops, my bad. Can't talk more about it. It's business. But one thing I can say, you're going to hell from tomorrow. I smirked fearlessly. My name is Thomas Miller. And this year, I finally turned 40. I was raised in a single parent ever since my father passed away in an accident when I was in the 4th grade. As the eldest son in a large family with 2 younger sisters and 2 younger brothers, we were hardly wealthy compared to the average household. In short, it was a pretty poor family. That's why I decided to work after finishing high school to help ease the family's financial strain.
Nowadays, you need to at least graduate from university, or you'll struggle later. You have good grades. It's such a waste. I think you can manage a public university, so please go.
My mother earnestly advised me to continue to university. However, I wasn't particularly fond of academic study and didn't mind starting work after finishing high school. In my mind, school and university was a place for those who wanted to study. If you didn't want to study, there was no need to pursue further education. I still believe this to be true. I had a stronger desire to earn money and learn useful knowledge in the real world.
I think graduating from university might have its benefits. There is some fun in going to university and hanging out with friends, but the desire to earn money outweighs that. If I ever want to go to university, I can always take online classes or attend night classes, so it'll work out.
I reasoned with my mother. I didn't have to go to university afterwards, so I didn't go to online courses or night classes. Since I started working right after high school graduation, I now have 22 years of work experience at the age of 40. If I had graduated from university, 22 years would put me in my mid-40s, so I feel a sense of superiority that even after 22 years, I'm still actively working in my prime. Although I was once looked down upon for my lack of formal education, I now genuinely appreciate having built my career through early hardships. If I could meet my younger self, I'd advise, there's no need to go to university. After graduating high school, I got a job at the automotive sheet metal factory. Usually companies don't hire people without a license, but the president of this company was a friend of my late father, so even I without a license could work. If he hadn't employed me, I wouldn't be where I am today. I really appreciate him. I worked hard as a mechanic's apprentice until I was 18. Then I got my driver's and mechanic's license. Now, I have the qualifications of a SE Master Mechanic. It was by chance that I joined a company, but once I started driving, I grew to love cars so much. I wonder if working straight after high school was fate. Although I don't do maintenance work on cars now that I've been promoted, I still love cars. I'm looking forward to tinkering with my car on my day off. I'm married at 30 and have 2 children. My work and personal life are fulfilling, and I have no complex about being a high school graduate. One day, while living such a fulfilling life, I received a letter of invitation for the reunion. It brought back memories of my high school days. There are classmates I don't want to see, but I definitely want to see Alex Nelson, the only one who understood and supported my situation when I said I would work after high school. I don't know what he thinks, but at that time, I considered Alex my best friend. He went to university, and our lives diverged so much that we naturally lost touch. However, deep down, I always wanted to see Alex again and share a drink with him. And I wanted to see my homeroom teacher in my last year of high school because she helped me. As I was pondering whether to attend due to my busy work schedule, my wife gave me a precious piece of advice.
Before we get married, you always said you wanted to see Alex again. Isn't this a chance? Work will go on without you, but the reunion might not come again.
She was right. The reunion is only a few times in my life. Thinking I might miss the chance to see Alex if I missed this, I took my attendance and sent it back to the organizer. On the day of the reunion, I was at the hotel venue. I arrived quite early. The reunion still had more than an hour to begin. I don't know if it's because of my long experience in society or my personality, but I have to get there more than 30 minutes before my appointment. Unless I have a packed schedule, I consider being late as unacceptable for a businessman, so I always end up arriving early. There was no one around who looked like they were attending the reunion yet. The organizer has not come yet. As I was walking around the venue, someone called out from behind me.
Hey, isn't that Thomas?
I turned around and saw the person I wanted to see the most. Oh, you're Alex, aren't you? It was Alex, my best friend in high school. I remember him as an impatient person, always the first to finish everything in class. That habit of his probably hasn't changed even now. You're still as impatient, huh? We've got more than an hour before the reunion starts, and even the organizer isn't here yet.
True, but I was surprised to see you here before me. I thought I'd be the first one. You're more impatient than I am.
We laughed at each other. Even though more than 20 years had passed since we last met, it felt like we had returned to our high school days. At that moment, I genuinely felt glad I came. However, as the reunion began, this sense of exhilaration quickly vanished. Because this time I saw the last guy I wanted to see.
Long time no see. You still look like a poor man. You remember me, right? It's Cheryl.
While I was talking with Alex, I was suddenly addressed in a shrill voice. I could never forget that face. Cheryl Martin, who used to mock me as Pool all the time during high school. Frankly, I didn't want to spend even a second talking to her, so I ignored her.
Oh, why ignore me? A beautiful and wealthy woman is trying to talk to you. If we weren't classmates, we'd be worlds apart and never have the chance to talk.
As for me, I didn't need such an opportunity. Cheryl isn't that beautiful, and more importantly, I have a loving wife. Her words meant nothing to me. I was certainly poor in high school. There was a lunch day once a month at my school. Knowing my mother was too busy with work every day, I never told her about it and always skipped lunch on that day. Alex, aware of my situation, would share a bit of his lunch, but it was never enough, and my stomach would rumble during afternoon classes. Cheryl, who was sitting next to me, mocked me for that.
Thomas's stomach is so loud, I can't concentrate on the class. Poor people can't even eat lunch.
Thomas's father has passed away, and H is a single-parent family. His mother is struggling. Don't mock him like that.
Normally, people have insurance or savings for emergencies, right? His family is too poor to have been able to afford it. If you're struggling with money, you should just ask for help from your father's or mother's family, right? If you can't do that, then his family has been poor for generations.
My parents were both from single parents, so my family certainly wasn't rich. But why should I be mocked by Cheryl for that? Is being poor a crime? She acted as if poor people didn't even deserve to exist. It was truly humiliating. Only those who have experienced it know what it's like for a teenage boy to have his worth denied in front of everyone. Unfortunately, I was in the same class as her all through high school, so she kept mocking me. She represents a dark chapter of my high school life. Now, I'm working in the automotive industry and earning a decent living. At least I don't think I'm the kind of poor person you can mock anymore, and even if I were poor, it wouldn't bother you, right? I've grown older, so there's no reason for Cheryl to freely insult me. I spoke my mind boldly, and for a moment, she seemed taken aback. But she was really unpleasant. She paused for a moment, seemed to come up with a subject to mock me, and opened her mouth to me again.
By the way, you started working right after high school, didn't you? Nowadays, finishing just high school seems a bit outdated. I heard you became a mechanic. Is that true?
Yes, it's true. I got my ASE Master Mechanic and became a car maintenance specialist. Even with just a high school diploma, you can achieve a lot if you try.
So, you work all greasy and dirty as a mechanic. That's not sophistication, huh? That may be fitting for a poor person.
Cheryl seems to still believe in a hierarchy of jobs, even at her age. Without jobs like mechanics, no one could safely drive their cars, but she seems ungrateful for that. Don't you own a car? Who do you think maintains it to ensure it's safe to drive? The mechanics you look down on are the ones making sure your car is safe to drive.
In my case, I always have a new car, so it's fine. If it needs maintenance, I just buy a new one. Maintenance is only needed for beat-up cars, right? Don't compare my car with those.
Talking to her is pointless. Even new cars may break down, and maintenance improves your chances of a safe and comfortable ride. This should be common knowledge to anyone with a bit of understanding. Even though she had no knowledge, she was saying sloppy things because she wanted to mock me. Because of that, she was looked at coldly by her classmates. But she didn't realize that.
No one succeeds in manual labor, and even though it was successful, it was at such a low level. The low level is a success for the bottom of high school graduates. You are pleased.
If the person themselves feels happy, then that's what matters, isn't it? I don't want others to dictate my happiness. I clearly don't see eye to eye with you, so please stop talking to me. I decided to ignore her because talking to her would only make me uncomfortable. I didn't want to spoil the reunion, which was supposed to be a special occasion. While I completely ignored Cheryl, she looked bored but then smirked as if she had an idea. And she's done incredible things to me.
Cheers to the reunion,
She exclaimed, and then proceeded to pour beer over my head. I got completely soaked.
Hey, what are you doing?
Alex yelled on my behalf, but it was too late. I had my hair styled at the salon in the morning for the reunion, but it was all ruined now. Understandably, the other classmates were taken aback by the scene. Alex offered me his handkerchief, but I gave it back to him as I did not want to dirty it, and I borrowed a towel from the hotel staff. As I wiped my head without a word, Cheryl suddenly excused herself, thinking she had gone a little too far.
Are you mad? This is just a joke. You know, like how they pour beer in baseball celebrations. I thought it would be fitting for our reunion.
It was a terrible excuse. But she would be absolutely furious if I were to pour beer on her. I was silently wondering how I could get revenge on Cheryl. It's not just about this incident. Considering everything up to now, I feel I need to do something significant to her. Otherwise, I won't be satisfied. I wanted to enjoy and end the reunion on a good note, but I decided to deal with this woman. Cheryl didn't like that I was silent, so she started bad-mouthing me again.
What's going on? Why are you ignoring me even though I'm apologizing to you? I've always disliked your attitude. Poor people can't even understand jokes, so it's really annoying.
If my memory serves right, Cheryl hasn't uttered a single word of apology. Yet, she's playing the victim as if she had apologized and wasn't forgiven. She is really disrespectful. Cut it out. You haven't apologized at all. Don't think you can get away with this. I could sue you and claim damages.
Go ahead, try it. My husband is a big deal. Do you know what happens when you turn my husband into an enemy?
She scoffed, looking down on me. Who cares who your husband is? I'll put both of you in your place. You think I can take on your husband?
My husband is an executive at a well-known company. Someone like you, a poor high school graduate, wouldn't stand a chance.
Alex next to me heard that and whispered to me.
Cheryl's husband is the sales manager at the well-known Royal Insurance.
Hearing that, I was extremely surprised. Your husband works as the sales manager at Royal Insurance, but the name is...
Oh, do you know my husband? My surname isn't Martin anymore. I used Martin at the reunion to avoid confusion, but it's now Green. Does that match the sales manager you know?
Finally, everything clicked. Life is truly fascinating. It's a series of unexpected events. As I was marveling at fate's twist, an email arrived on my phone at just that moment. I was even more surprised when I saw the email. I can't believe I got this email at this time. Now I can get revenge on Cheryl. When Cheryl heard me talking to myself, she looked at me doubtfully. I told her, "Too bad. Tomorrow's the deadline for the $10 million contract."
What?
Cheryl looked confused. Oops, my bad. Can't talk more about it. It's business. But one thing I can say, you're going to hell from tomorrow. I smirked fearlessly. The next day, there was a call from Cheryl at my office. My secretary transferred the call to me.
You have a call from Cheryl. She calls herself your classmate. What should I do?
I hadn't expected her to call my office, but knowing it was Cheryl, I could guess the reason. I was curious to know what Cheryl would say, so I decided to take the call. Hello, I'm on a line.
My husband is demanding a divorce. I don't understand why, but he mentioned something about disrespecting you. What's going on? Do something.
Even if you suddenly call me and ask to fix your marriage crisis, there's nothing I can do about it. You should discuss it with your husband. It's none of my business. As I was about to hang up the phone, Cheryl started to panic and apologized hastily.
I'm sorry, don't hang up. It seems my husband is terminating the contract with your company. The $10 million contract termination you mentioned yesterday, that's what it meant, right?
Well, yes, that's what it meant. But either way, your calling me won't change my mind. Your divorce is pretty much confirmed.
Why do you think you can decide such things? A contract worth $10 million requires significant authority, right?
She still thought it was some kind of mistake because she didn't understand that I could decide on a $10 million contract. You called my company, and you still don't get it. I am the president of this company. It's only natural that the president decides whether to make a contract or not.
What? You're the president? I can't believe a high school graduate could be the president. It must be a small company, right? And a contract worth $10 million doesn't make sense to me.
You still insist on my high school diploma, but if you go into society, it doesn't matter what your education is. How long are you going to stay in that student mindset? I am indeed the president, and our company makes a profit of $30 million a year. I don't usually say this, but I believe we're one of the major players around here, something you seem unaware of. It turned out that Cheryl had heard of my company's name, but assumed it was some small auto repair shop with the same name. She still believed I worked at an auto maintenance company. In reality, I had only worked as a mechanic until my late 20s, after which I started my own used car sales business. This venture turned out to be a huge success, and now it's a well-known used car dealership in the area. This fiscal year, our profits soared to more than double the previous $30 million, with the potential to reach $100 million in profits in a few years. My company not only sells used cars, but also provides auto repair services and acts as an insurance agency. The insurance agency part of our business already generates about $10 million in revenue, and in fact, we have been partnered exclusively with Royal Insurance. The contract renewal with them was due today. When I explained it to her, Cheryl sounded startled and screamed.
What? A high school graduate built such a big company? How is that possible?
I've already signed with another rival insurance company. It doesn't really matter to us which insurance company we contract. Not having to deal with Royal Insurance anymore is actually a relief. I was tired of their elitist attitudes. When she listened to my story, she became hopeless and couldn't say anything. But I felt no sympathy. Talking to you further has no benefit for me. I'm hanging up now. As I was about to put down the receiver, Cheryl began to rant hysterically on the other end. but it was also trivial to me, so I pretended not to hear and hung up. The next day, to my surprise, Royal Insurance's sales manager, Jordan Green, accompanied by Cheryl, came to my company. It was highly unusual for a sales manager of a large corporation to personally visit like this, but the abrupt termination of a $10 million contract must have been hard for them to accept. Well, Director Jordan, what brings you here today, and with your wife?" I greeted them, pretending to be oblivious to the contract issue. Jordan seemed irritated by my demeanor and raised his voice slightly in response.
"You know why we're here, don't you? You must understand why I brought my wife. I don't know the specifics of what my wife told you, but surely making a contract decision based on that would be mixing personal issues with business."
Indeed, if that were the sole reason for not renewing the contract, it would be so. However, our decision to not renew the contract wasn't just because of your wife. There are valid reasons behind it. However, Jordan was not open to listening.
"I don't want to hear such convenient excuses. I'm even considering divorcing my wife over this. Show some sincerity on your part."
His speaking became increasingly rough. He was quite irritated. "Whether you two get divorced is irrelevant to me. It has nothing to do with our business dealings."
"I don't want to hear that from someone who ended a contract over unrelated matters. If there's no valid reason, we might have to take this to court. Are you prepared for that?"
He threatened with the possibility of legal action. Did he think that would freak me out? If the reason for terminating the contract is because of a dispute with Cheryl, I will be at a disadvantage if it goes to court. However, that was not the case. I decided to explain the situation to Jordan. "Actually, we received an internal email alleging that your insurance representative and our company were colluding to sell unnecessary contracts to clients." I paused there to gauge Jordan's reaction. He was visibly shocked, at a loss for words. His earlier bravado had vanished, replaced by streams of cold sweat and a pale face. Moreover, the email stated that the sales manager of Royal Insurance suggested giving kickbacks, and that's what the insurance agent has been doing. But since the email was anonymous, we couldn't just take it at face value. That's why I ordered the formation of an internal investigation team to find out the truth.
"And what did you find?"
Jordan asked me weakly. When we questioned the insurance agent, they initially denied it, but ultimately confessed. This happened just one day before the negotiation for the contract extension with your company. I found out about it through an email during the reunion and instructed to void the contract immediately. That's how we narrowly avoided finalizing the agreement. That email at that time, Cheryl seemed to recall our interaction during the reunion.
I can't believe you received such an email at that time.
It's the consequence of your own actions. Of course, I've already reported this matter to your company's president, and I expect a decision will be made soon. Cheryl, now fully aware of the details, suddenly raised her voice.
I wasn't at fault, so the divorce should be called off. If you still want a divorce, expect a significant settlement from me. After all, the contract termination was all you're doing.
My decision to consider divorce isn't solely based on the contract issue. It's because you fail as a homemaker. You don't do household chores, you neglect parenting, and you've changed a lot since we married.
In front of me, the two started arguing vehemently, pointing out each other's flaws.
If we're getting divorced, I'm taking the assets. If you don't like that, you should apologize to me.
As if I'd ever do that. You don't do any housework and just waste money. I should be the one claiming alimony from you.
Now both of you, get out, and don't show your faces here again. When I said that, both of them suddenly started crying out loud. They had probably never been told that by others before. Oh, before you go, let me share one piece of interesting information. I heard from the insurance agent involved in the kickbacks that half of that money was going to Director Jordan, and he was spending it at hostess clubs.
Really? Hostess clubs, so he wasn't saving but blowing it all there.
Exactly. He's been squandering more than he was making illicitly, so there's likely hardly any savings left. Have you ever actually checked how much is saved? Observing Cheryl's reaction, it seemed that Jordan had been managing all their finances. Assuming they had significant savings, Cheryl turned pale and confronted Jordan.
Is that true? How much do we have in savings? Tell me clearly.
Faced with such a fierce confrontation, whether he could no longer hide it or simply resigned himself, he readily disclosed the amount of their savings.
There's no savings left. I've spent it all, thinking the money from the insurance schemes would keep coming in. Now that's going away too. It looks like bankruptcy is the only option.
He knew where he was going, and he looked relieved. He thought that whatever happens, happens.
Don't joke with me. I wasn't told about having no savings. What about my debts then?
What? You have debts? That's news to me. What debts are you talking about?
Cheryl, panicked upon hearing about the bankruptcy, blurted out more than she should have. Pressured by Jordan, she quickly adopted a defiant attitude and boldly explained her debts.
Why not? You spent a lot of money at hostess clubs, right? I also want to enjoy going to Mala Host Bar occasionally. After all, I've been putting up with an old man like you. It's only natural I'd want to have fun with younger guys.
What did you say? Being with an old hag like you is suffocating. I can't stand being with you anymore. We're getting a divorce.
Fine by me. There's no money, and you're a mean old man. There's no point in staying married to you.
The argument escalated beyond control, turning into a full-blown fight. I can't stand to hear this anymore, so take it outside, and we'll be seeing you in court. We will recover all the money taken by our insurance agent and return it to the customers. Jordan begged me not to do that, but I didn't mind calling security to get them out. He clung to my legs, weeping and apologizing.
I never knew you were such a disgraceful man.
Cheryl regretted getting married when she saw her husband. If you don't leave, I'll call the police. Upon my insistence, the two of them reluctantly left. In the end, I didn't go to court but managed to recover the money through a settlement. I explained the situation to the customers, switched their insurance to more appropriate plans, and our company covered the difference. Of course, we made sure that the insurance agent and Jordan, who received a share of the kickbacks, bore the cost of this compensation. The total compensation was about $200,000, of which Jordan paid about $80,000. Despite this, Jordan had hardly any savings, so he had to take on the amount as debt. From now on, his life will likely be dedicated to repaying that debt. His involvement in the embezzlement became known within Royal Insurance, leading to his dismissal without severance pay. Despite having worked in a top-tier company, he found himself unemployed at 50, with no savings and only debts. His misdeeds were known industry-wide, preventing any chance of re-employment in insurance. Having devoted his career solely to the insurance industry, Jordan, now over 50, found himself with zero experience in any other field. Consequently, he ended up becoming a part-time worker juggling 3 different jobs despite his age. However, as these jobs require no specific skills, his salary will unlikely increase, and it's easy to imagine he won't be able to continue as his physical strength declines with age. Even though it's none of my business, I can't help but worry about what he will do. In the end, Cheryl divorced Jordan. Cheryl, having been a housewife for many years without acquiring any skills, faces even tougher challenges. With no computer experience, her employment options are mostly limited to physical labor. She doesn't have the stamina to work 8 hours. In the end, she doesn't have a choice and works at a middle-aged hostess club. Ironically, she ended up working at a hostess club that her husband had spent a lot of money on. It's hard to imagine how she feels about this. This situation has caused her stress to accumulate, and she ultimately resumed her visits to Mala Host Bar. She has not even completed paying off her debts and going to Male Host Bar. She is now heading straight for ruin. In the end, our company's decision to honestly disclose the insurance issue paid off, significantly boosting our credibility. It was beneficial that the media praised our approach, which garnered public support in our favor. Additionally, at this time, a major used car dealership was exposed for fraud, bringing it to the brink of collapse. Being compared to them likely worked in our favor. Many of their customers switched to us, causing our sales to quadruple and profits to exceed $100 million, securing our future success. I have learned from this incident that in the long run, people who are honest and truthful in their business will benefit. While deceit might offer short-term gains, it inevitably comes to light. Someday the lie will be exposed. I take this experience as a lesson to continue doing business that benefits our customers. A company where both customers and employees can be happy is my ideal. Even if it sounds idealistic, I want to create such a company. Since reuniting at the reunion, I've been going out for drinks occasionally with Alex. Having worked since graduating from high school, I rarely had the chance to socialize with peers. It's a new discovery for me at this age how enjoyable it is to go out drinking with people my own age. I want to cherish my relationship with Alex as well. I aim to enrich both my personal and professional life, striving for a fulfilling journey ahead.
There's no seat for high school graduates like you in this event. A loser like you has no place here. Get the hell out of my face.
The director gave me a hearty and joyful smile and told me off. I have a lot of things I want to say, but I can't go against my boss, the director of the department. All I could do was to follow his orders. My name is Matt, I'm 27 years old. My mother passed away soon after my birth. Afterwards, I lived with my father until he died in a tragic accident at work. I was just a kid in elementary school when I was taken in by my paternal grandparents. However, the grandparents were involved in a car pileup accident, and they both died. I was in high school at the time, and all my relatives were talking behind my back, saying that Matt brings bad luck, and no one wanted to take me in. For a while, I lived alone in my grandparents' house. I wanted to give my grandparents who raised me such a comfortable life, so I studied hard to get into a good company in the future. But now my grandparents are no longer with me. Studying seems pointless now. Having lost all of my beloved family members, I was left feeling powerless and dropped out of university. However, I needed to earn a living, so I got job at the local construction company and started working as a site worker. I worked without thinking until I was exhausted, and then went home to sleep. To forget my sorrow, I just kept repeating these empty days. Then, one day, something happened.
How about living with me?
It was my uncle from my mother's side who suddenly showed up at my grandparents' house and said that I had lost touch with my mother's side of the family after she died, and I had only met my uncle when I was little. I was confused at first when he suddenly offered me to live with him, but it seems that he is concerned about me.
You're still a child. You need to be under the care of an adult.
Uncle.
Besides, I've been living alone as a single man. I've always been lonely by myself. So I'd like to live together with Matt.
He said so and winked mischievously at me. Seeing him like that made me smile for the first time in a while, and I decided to move in with him. My uncle took good care of me. He provided me with everything I needed for clothing, food, and housing, and also gave me advice about work. The company I was working at paid low wages and had a high risk of injury, so he was worried about me and introduced me to a new job.
Your father died in an accident at work. As a father figure to you, I'm worried about you.
The company my uncle introduced me to was a major corporation where normally someone with just a high school diploma wouldn't be able to get a job. I was assigned to a sales department that was short-staffed and incredibly busy, almost desperate for extra hands. At first, the reaction from others was iffy. Why would a high school graduate join this company? I'll do my best not to cause any trouble. I had learned business manners from my uncle before joining the company and had done all the studying I could. I worked hard, taking full advantage of my knowledge and skills. Plus, the physical and mental strength I gained from my construction job also helped me as a salesperson. Gradually, I started to achieve results, and after a year, I had become a fully familiar member of the sales department. Once I became a member of the team, our company had a great atmosphere and was a comfortable place to work. I hope to keep working here until retirement. Feeling quite comfortable here, I've been thinking about continuing to work at this company for a long time to come. But then one day, an unexpected event occurred. It was early autumn, shortly after I turned 27. Our company's president was promoted to chairman, and the vice president was decided to be the new president. The aim seems to be to bring a fresh perspective into the company and strive for further corporate development. In line with this, there were changes in personnel within the company. The manager of the sales department I belong to has been transferred to a branch office.
My elderly mother lives alone in my hometown. I had requested a transfer to the local branch there for a while now, and it's been approved. I'm living and working with my mother from now on.
I see. It's sad, but please do your best there too. The manager was a good man that treated even me, who was a high school graduate, without discrimination. His transfer was a bit of a shock to me, but I can't just keep feeling down about it. The new manager for our sales department was appointed from the branch office's sales department. It seems that the candidates for the next manager, including the assistant manager and the section chief, are currently handling a significant project and have expressed a desire to defer any promotion.
I'm looking forward to working with you all.
The new director, Johnson, greeted us with a big smile. At first, I thought he would be friendly and approachable, but he...
Hey you, what's your highest level of education?
I graduated from A university.
You have a fairly decent educational background.
At our first meeting, Director Johnson unhesitatingly asked us about our educational backgrounds. I later learned he judged people by their academic qualifications and either completely ignored those who didn't meet his standards or subjected them to behavior bordering on power harassment. Of course, Director Johnson doesn't like people like me who graduated from high school.
You're a high school graduate. I can't believe it. How can someone with such a low-bottom education be in this company and in the head office's sales department? I was assigned to a branch office's sales department.
He ignored all my achievements and looked down on me simply for being a high school graduate. Whenever he opened his mouth, it was nothing but insults and foul language. I can count on one hand the number of times he's actually called me by my name, dumping his work on me and only taking achievements from me is his daily routine.
You should be grateful I even use a high school graduate like you.
His unbelievable actions and words made it seem like he didn't even regard me as human. Moreover, he started sabotaging my work to drive me out of the company. One day, something happened. I was preparing to visit a client where we were in the final stages of consultation. I was planning to use a projector for my presentation, so I packed a USB with the presentation data into my bag. However, why is the data gone? I realized at the last minute that all the data in the USB was deleted. I managed to receive the data, but we started the presentation much later than scheduled. Of course, this left a bad impression on the client. Despite my best efforts, the presentation didn't go well, and I returned to the company disheartened.
What's wrong with you? You look so depressed. Let me guess. Your presentation was a failure. It's no surprise. The presentations can't be done without data.
As Director Johnson said that with a smirk, I realized that he was the culprit. I didn't mind him disliking me, but I never expected him to go this far. I did everything I could to recover the lost time and managed to secure the contract. When I reported that the contract was finalized, Director Johnson had a look on his face that seemed to say he was not pleased.
You are getting cocky for a high school graduate.
His sharp gaze made me suspect he would repeat his actions. My premonition soon came true. I was heading to a party celebrating the new president's inauguration at the luxury hotel. However, I encountered Director Johnson outside the venue.
Why are you here?
Well, I was also invited to the party.
A useless high school graduate was invited. Wait here.
I wasn't allowed to enter the venue, so I had no choice but to wait outside. Sooner after, Director Johnson came back, holding my seat with both hands.
I don't know what the mistake was, but when I checked, there really was a seat for you. You know, trash like you doesn't belong here.
As he said so, he roughly put my seat down in the hallway.
There's no seat for high school graduates like you in this event. A loser like you has no place here. Get the hell out of my face.
Director Johnson grinned and said, I guess he really hates me. I realized that once again, it's impossible not to feel anything after being treated like this, but after all, he is still my boss. As I am just a general employee, I am not allowed to rebel outright. I understood it. I'm leaving now. With just that retort, I immediately turned on my heel and left the scene. However, just 10 minutes later, I received a call from Director Johnson, and I answered the phone with a frown on my face. Hello.
Come back here right now.
Do I need to come back? But you told me to go away, right? What is going on?
Just come back right now. It's an order from your boss.
Just then the call ended abruptly. I headed back to the party venue with a sigh. When I returned to the party venue, I saw the new president and his secretary, and there was Director Johnson with a pale face. I'm back, Director Johnson. What happened? When I spoke up, Director Johnson quickly turned towards me and showed a confused expression.
Well.
I let out a small sigh at Director Johnson's hesitant response. What's going on? I turned to the secretary instead of him and asked her. However, instead of the secretary answering, the new president, who was standing next to her, spoke up first.
I heard this fool kick you out. Is that true, Matt?
Yes, sir, it's true, President. The new president smiled bitterly and replied to me,
Please call me Uncle Bob, like you always do. I accidentally revealed your true identity to this big fool earlier.
Hearing the whole story, I couldn't help myself but be dumbfounded. After kicking me out, as the start time of the party approached, Director Johnson was waiting outside the venue for the arrival of the new president. It seems he was trying to curry favor by greeting the new president before the other employees. But then,
President, I apologize. There's been a bit of trouble.
As the new president appeared, before Director Johnson could greet him, the secretary suddenly stepped forward.
Problem? What happened?
Actually, the chairman's son is missing. We checked and his seat itself is gone.
Matt isn't here yet. What do you mean his seat is gone?
Director Johnson's eyes widened at the words of the new president.
No seat for Matt. Could it be that?
Finding it hard to believe his own speculation, Director Johnson asked the new president,
Is this Matt from the sales department we're talking about?
The president glanced at his secretary and replied to Director Johnson as if he had no choice.
Yes, Matt from the sales department is the chairman's son. The chairman and I have been close personally for years, and I've known his son, Matt, for a long time.
Indeed, I've had a long relationship with him. My uncle had legally adopted me and taken me in. However, my uncle had no experience in raising children, and at first he struggled with how to care him. That's when he consulted with Uncle Bob, who was the vice president at the time. We had a good private relationship, and he had a son who was about my age, so he gave my uncle various advice. Uncle Bob was concerned about me, frequently visited my house. He was amiable and kind, and with his help, my uncle and I became closer. I joined my uncle's company, but I didn't want to be treated specially, so I kept my relationship with him a secret. On the day I first called my uncle Dad, he apparently rushed to report it to Uncle Bob right away.
I got a call out of the blue from the president in tears, wondering what was going on.
I vividly remember that I apologized to the smiling Uncle Bob, turning bright red with embarrassment, saying, "My father has caused you trouble."
It was my request that he attend a party this time, but where was his seat gone? Oh, by the way, only a few executives know about this, so please keep it under wraps.
The moment he heard Uncle Bob's words, Director Johnson's face turned pale blue. Afterwards, Uncle Bob and the secretary confronted Director Johnson, who was acting strangely. They learned he had put my seat in the hallway and sent me away. So that's what happened.
Why didn't you tell me?
Director Johnson, with a mix of anger and confusion, confronted me. I grimaced and kept my distance from him. I asked to keep it a secret when I joined the company because if people knew I was the chairman's son, they would favor me. I wanted to be promoted on my own merits. Plus, if it got out, it would attract troublesome people like you, Director Johnson. I pointed out, leaving him speechless. But maybe I should have been upfront from the beginning. Then you, Director Johnson, wouldn't have resorted to borderline bullying behavior towards me.
Did I bully you?
Hearing my words, Uncle Bob's face contorted. Deciding it was time to come clean, I revealed all the instances of bullying I had suffered from Director Johnson. As I shared my story, Uncle Bob's expression began to mix with anger. The secretary standing next to him also grimaced significantly.
I can't believe we have someone of such low caliber in our company. Before judging others by their education, you should reflect on your own character.
Faced with the secretary's relentless words, Director Johnson hung his head.
Indeed. I heard you were promoted from the branch office due to your achievements, but from Matt's story, it seems those were not your own.
No, it's not like that. I mean,
Director Johnson's gaze wandered around with cold sweat dripping down his face. And when his gaze turned to me, he tried to cling on to me with a goofy smile on his face.
I was good to you, right? I gave you work and was tough at times, but it was all to help you grow.
Disgusted by his unconvincing excuses, I raised my hand to cut off Director Johnson mid-sentence. You didn't delegate work to me. You dumped it on me. And then, calling me a high school graduate, bottom of the barrel, incompetent, you've constantly ridiculed me. How can anyone grow with such horrible verbal abuse? Where in the world can you find someone who could? I've never felt you were good to me.
Wait, please. My dream is to be promoted to an executive position.
I don't care about that. Then, I pulled something out of my pocket.
What's that?
This is a voice recorder. I've been recording your harassment at work. I was preparing to bring this to HR, but it seems that won't be necessary now. When I glanced at Uncle Bob, he nodded firmly at me.
Let's take this matter to HR immediately. It seems our reform has some inappropriate decisions.
While Uncle Bob said so, he glared at Director Johnson with cold eyes. That must have been the final straw. Director Johnson's face turned from blue to white, and he collapsed weakly to the ground. After that, Uncle Bob immediately contacted HR as he had promised. As a result, Director Johnson not only received a stern warning from Uncle Bob, but also directly from Uncle who heard the story. He was then demoted and sent back to the branch office because he was not allowed to stay in the same department with me. The story of his demotion due to bullying had spread throughout the branch office, and I heard that he no longer had a place in the company. Having lost his position and everything else, Director Johnson apparently looked utterly exhausted. The new president also emphasized to keep my identity as the chairman's son confidential if I wanted to remain in the company. No one would believe Director Johnson anymore. Meanwhile, I've been working comfortably in the now peaceful sales department. The new director took over after wrapping up a project as the assistant head. Following that, the section chief became the assistant head, and I was promoted to a senior position. I plan to work even harder than before and aim for further promotions.
Hey, you're Brandon, right? What's a loser like you doing here?
I heard this taunting voice from behind me and involuntarily flinched. Gripping my chest that was pounding wildly, I turned around to find, as expected, a smirking Mike, bringing back unpleasant memories, and I froze on the spot.
You know how much this course meal costs. There's no way someone like you could afford it. So just go home. I don't want my dinner ruined.
Mike sneered, closing in on me. Looking up at him, being shorter, I clenched my fists tightly. My name is Brandon Parker. This spring, I started working in my familiar hometown for the kids. After graduating from college, I spent 2 years learning more practical skills and finally got to work in a field I'm truly passionate about. The place I work is one where most local kids end up needing at some point, and I've been cared for by the people working there when I was young. They were surprised yet very happy when I showed up for the interview wanting to work there. Working at this welcoming place, interacting with kids every day is challenging but fulfilling. And above all, if I get through this week, I'll receive my first paycheck. I've decided to use my first paycheck to repay my kind and admirable parents, who always supported my dreams. It might sound cheesy, but I plan to take them to a fancy restaurant to express my gratitude. My family was never wealthy. My dad worked in a factory, making machine parts, always working hard for our family, and my mom, in Dad's stead, gently supported me, a crybaby when I was young. I've always wanted to tell them how grateful I am for making my dreams come true. They both smiled happily and said they were looking forward to it when I mentioned my plan, making me happy too. On the promised weekend night, I took my parents to the fancy restaurant I had secretly reserved. They smiled with joy and surprise, and we reminisced the old memories over delicious dishes. It had been a while since I had such a relaxed conversation with my parents, and I drank a bit too much in the excitement. I got up to go to the restroom. On my way back, though I was smiling, thinking of my parents' happy faces, I was concerned about the occasional somber expressions my mom showed. Why does my usually cheerful mom show such a face? There must be a reason. Lost in these thoughts, I heard a familiar voice from behind.
Hey, isn't that Brandon?
I shivered at the sound. Suppressing my racing heart, I turned around to see Mike, my classmate from elementary to middle school, and Kayla, a childhood friend, looking at me in shock, and I was paralyzed. As Mike approached me with a smirk, waves of unwanted memories flooded my mind. In elementary school, I was a shy kid who cried at the smallest things. Mike, the class bully, enjoyed teasing me. Mike, this so-called leader among us kids, used to bring others and torment me. They threw bugs at me, making me cry, and forced me to slide down slopes even when I was scared. To me, back then, it was nothing short of cruelty. Mike and his friends would laugh at my frightened cries, leaving me in tears and just walking away. Only Kayla, my childhood friend, would ever treat my wounds with her first aid kit.
Don't let those mean guys get to you. I know you're stronger and kinder than anyone.
Kayla would say with a smile, helping me endure the bullying. But seeing Kayla's sad smile, I feared making my kind parents worry if they saw my wounds. To avoid letting my mom realize I was being bullied, I started making up excuses for my mud-stained clothes and the band-aids on my knees. Whenever she asked, I would say, I fell during PE, or I got dirty playing football with friends. This way, I lived in fear of being teased and harassed at school. While at home, I tried to keep my parents from finding out. As a result, I couldn't concentrate on my studies in elementary and middle school, often getting scolded by teachers for poor grades. My bad grades became another reason for Mike and his friends to mock me. They would come over to my desk whenever test results were returned, look at my scores, and burst into laughter.
You can't even do sports, and now you can't study either. You're just a loser. Well, I'm the son of a company president, an elite.
Mike would taunt. Hearing these words, I would end up crying, but Mike and his friends found it amusing, and the other students just turned a blind eye, offering no help. I continued living under such stressful conditions, but when I reached my second year of middle school and the exam season began for a prep school, the harassment from Mike lessened, allowing me to focus a bit more on my studies. I desperately studied to get into a high school far away from Mike, hoping for a peaceful life. Thankfully, I managed to get into a different high school, finally finding a safe and comfortable environment. I thought I had gained some strength to resist such unjust pressure. But now, facing Mike again, my body wouldn't move. My mind went completely blank. Unfazed by my discomfort, Mike continued with a nasty smirk.
Why's a loser like you here? Do you know how expensive the course meals are at this place? There's no way you can afford it. You're ruining my dinner with this beautiful lady.
Towered over by the taller Mike, I couldn't help but look up at him, frozen and unable to move. Trembling and unable to speak, I was just an amusement for Mike. He turned to Kayla and said, "Come on, say something to him. It's embarrassing to have a guy like you as a childhood friend." Kayla, suddenly addressed by Mike, looked at me with a near-tear-full face. Seeing her expression, I clenched my fists and somehow managed to move my trembling lips. "I'm not a loser. Stop making Kayla uncomfortable. I'm not the same person I was back then." As I glared at Mike, he grabbed my shirt in irritation. Bracing myself for a punch, I closed my eyes tightly. Then, I heard a stern voice, "That's enough." Turning towards the voice, I saw my dad with an unusually cold expression, and my mom glaring at Mike with a face like thunder. Mike, frozen by the unexpected arrival of my parents, let go of me as my dad coldly asked, "What do you think you're doing to my precious son?" Mike clicked his tongue and turned his back on us. As he tried to leave with Kayla, my dad continued,
"Running away now won't change anything. Mike Ellis, I know everything you've done to Brandon. Despite all this time, it seems you hadn't grown up. I'll have a proper talk with your dad. Since your son dared to mess with mine, who will save countless lives as a doctor, Parker Industries will cancel all contracts with Ellis Medical Equipment."
At that moment, Mike turned around in shock. "Brandon, a doctor, and Parker Industries," he muttered, looking pale as he glanced between my dad and me. In fact, after focusing on my studies in high school, I had excelled and developed a dream of becoming a doctor to help the injured and suffering. Having shared this with my parents, they fully supported me, and I had just started working as a pediatrician at a local hospital this spring after completing medical school and a 2-year residency. Of course, Mike didn't know any of this, and I was puzzled by my dad's words. While I was still processing, Mike desperately apologized to my dad for his past actions, but my dad coldly dismissed him, saying, "It's too late for anything now." Stunned, Mike collapsed to his knees as we turned to continue our dinner. My dad, now gentle and smiling, said, "Let's continue our meal." As we were about to return to our private room, I caught Kayla's eye. She looked lost, standing behind Mike. I managed to say, "Would you like to join us?" My parents smiled and nodded in agreement, and Kayla joined us, relieved. Then my dad revealed everything he had kept from me. Though he had always said he worked in a factory making machine parts, he was actually the heir to a company managing many factories and had become its president when I was in middle school. The factory specialized in precision parts for well-known medical and food manufacturers. It's including Ellis Medical Equipment, one of their clients.
Come to think of it, Mike always boasted about his dad being a president. He's working in his dad's company now.
Piecing together my dad's and Kayla's stories, it seemed Mike had unknowingly insulted a key business partner of his own company, resulting in a canceled deal. As I nodded in understanding, my mom looked at me with teary eyes, asking what was wrong. She slowly shared her long-held feelings, revealing why she was so emotional against Mike. Apparently, both my parents knew about the bullying I faced from Mike at school. My mom, who first noticed something was wrong, discussed with my dad what to do. They decided, "We don't want him to think that parents will solve everything. We won't intervene. unless we see signs of injuries that could endanger his life. We'll wait for him to tell us. My mom was always pained by my attempts to hide injuries and stains. Even now, as an adult, she felt guilty, thinking that those memories might still be a scar on my heart. As she spoke, tears streamed down her face. I smiled gently at her and said, "Don't cry, Mom. It's because of the way you raised me that I've worked so hard to become a doctor who can help kids with the same wounds. The dream to heal not just patient bodies, hearts too, is a gift you gave me." I told her this to stop her tears, but she only cried more. My dad gently rubbed her back, tears in his eyes too.
We were always worried about you, but didn't want to spoil you. You might not remember, but when you became a high school student and told us you wanted to be a doctor, we were so happy. Remember, your mom and dad will always support your dreams.
Tears welled up in my eyes, and Kayla, sitting next to me, offered a handkerchief with a smile, teasing, "You need to work on not crying so much." I smiled through my tears at her kind gesture. On the way back from the restaurant, my parents asked me to walk Kayla home. While walking, she confided in me about graduating from college, becoming a nurse, and working at a major local hospital. She also shared how Mike, now a medical equipment sales rep, had fixated on her and pestered her, but she couldn't firmly reject him. As I wondered how to respond, Kayla suddenly looked up at the night sky.
I remember today why I became a nurse. It was because of the time you thanked me with a smile when I treated you in elementary school. I wasn't wrong. You were always the strongest and kindest person. Thank you for giving me a dream,"
she said with a warm smile. I felt like crying again, and she teased me, "You really need to get over that crying habit." We shook hands, promising to support each other as colleagues in the medical field. Later, my dad actually went to speak with Mike's father, the president of Ellis Medical Equipment. Despite their past relationship, they agreed to continue business if Mike transferred from headquarters to a regional branch for further training. I hope that if we meet again, he will have changed. As I face the lives of children striving to live each day, I feel a warm sensation in my heart when I hear them say, "Thank you, doctor. I'm truly grateful for becoming a doctor."
Finally, the nuisance is gone.
One day, after being suddenly declared redundant by Manager Sanders, Supervisor Swan said that to me. I was working as a sidelined employee. My subordinates laughed at me. I just said, "It can't be helped then." My name is Robert Johnson, 45 years old. Due to some circumstances, on my cousin's recommendation, I've been working as an office clerk at this furniture manufacturer. Ever since I was a kid, I loved drawing and making things. My dad ran a construction company, and occasionally, he'd take me to the sites.
Robert, this is how homes are built.
As a kid, I'd look up at the houses and then at the ground. Lots of unused wood was piled up. I remember picking up a small piece and bringing it home. My dad laughed, asking, "What are you gonna use that for?" I love rainy days. Because on rainy days, Dad's work was off, and he'd always be making his hobby model kits. He bought me some too, and we'd enjoy building model kits together in his room. I wasn't great at school or sports, but I did love art class. I enjoyed playing video games with my classmates, but I preferred making something on my own. I'd often decline invitations to play games, saying, "I've got something to do today." Of course, by doing that, I gradually became more and more isolated. One summer vacation, I went to visit my grandmother's house, my mom's mom, and stayed there for a while. It was quite rural, with potato fields stretching out and the sunset on the horizon. My grandmother doted on me, and the dinners she made were delicious. The freshly picked vegetables from the countryside were so sweet. They could be eaten as is, without any dressing. There were mountains, and the sea was close by. I got really tan swimming in the sea. When riding the waves that crashed in, my mom laughed under a wide-brimmed hat on the sand. Tired from swimming, I'd ride back to my grandmother's house in my mom's pickup, where she had made lots of potato salad.
Robert, the potatoes from our field are delicious, aren't they?
My grandma would ask me. The potatoes, like the other vegetables, were sweet. I devoured them eagerly. That day's dish was stew, with potatoes and carrots from my grandmother's garden. The bath was wooden, and it smelled nice. After taking a bath, I'd often talk with my mom about where we wanted to go the next day, and I'd fall asleep soundly in the bedroom of our country house. There was a mountain nearby, and we decided to visit. Holding hands with my mom, we'd slowly climb the gentle slope. The chorus of cicadas, unheard in the city, could be heard. I felt the sunlight filtering through the trees and breathed in the green air. I found a red flower I had never seen before. While my mom taught me the names of the flowers, we headed to the mountaintop, where many yellow and white flowers bloomed. Eating my grandmother's homemade potato salad and omelet, we sat on a bench, feeling the quiet breeze. As I played around, I was amazed to find out insects in the countryside were 3 times bigger than those in the city. My excitement shot through the roof. My mom hates bugs, but I found myself staring at a big one for a while. Then, we slowly made our way down the mountain, swaying in the pickup truck. There were many pickups at my dad's construction site, but it was my first time riding one, so the swaying was really fun for me. Thinking back, my dad's car was quite luxurious, with hardly any shake, and that was normal for me. On the way back, the sunset over the potato field horizon again dyed everything orange. The potato fields, like a green sea, waved in the wind against the orange background, looking so beautiful. Then, I enjoyed my grandmother's dinner and drew pictures of a blue sea, green trees, and the sunset horizon on drawing paper.
Robert, you're really good at drawing.
My grandmother would praise me. As I explored the spacious countryside house, I felt something was off. I realized what it was. My grandmother's house was filled with old furniture. Everything was made of wood, and I captured the old furniture with an instant camera. The next day, I told my grandmother, "I'll come again," and once again spent a long time on the train. I fell asleep, but before I knew it, my mom woke me up for the transfer to the city. The view from the train slowly changed to the cityscape. The countryside sky had been a clear, beautiful blue with white clouds floating, but the city sky, despite being clear, looked gloomy. I entered my room, cleaned up the scattered wood, and drew pictures of the old-fashioned furniture from my grandmother's house. After that, I had a mountain of homework other than art to finish. I gradually completed it, but I really struggled with studying. Summer vacation ended, and I submitted my picture diary and homework. Then, the school I disliked started. In the higher grades, during a home visit, my mom was distressed because my teacher said I was falling behind in my studies, and she consulted with my dad. I had a classmate nearby, my dad's sister's son, Ken, and my dad suggested I go to a tutoring school with Ken. After tutoring, we'd go to a nearby home improvement store to buy wood glue and small nails with my allowance. I quickly finished my school homework and made miniature furniture with wood I brought from my dad's site. My room became more of a workshop than a study room. When my family went out to the mall, I'd head straight to the furniture section to look around at various furniture. I was really interested in furniture. My parents said I was a bit different, but on days without tutoring, I'd draw the furniture I remembered and make miniature furniture by myself. On rainy days, I still enjoyed making model kits with my dad. Although I worked hard at tutoring, I also got deeply into my hobbies. Several times, Ken came to my house and suggested, "Let's play games." But I told him I had other hobbies, and he entered my room.
Huh, this is the model kit I like.
Seeing Ken's eyes sparkle, I handed him the half-finished model kit, saying, "You can freely work on it," and he happily started doing so. I cut the wood into small pieces and made a miniature sofa. Ken looked at it curiously.
Robert, you're really skillful. Do you like doing this?
Yay, I like drawing and making things, but I'm not good at studying.
Oh, I haven't done my homework today either. My mom's going to scold me again.
Saying that, Ken went home to fetch his homework, and we decided to finish it together. Ken was good at studying, and he helped me with math and such. Then, after finishing our homework quickly, I started drawing the next furniture. Ken enjoyed the model kit. I experimented with changing the colors and shapes of the furniture I remembered while finishing the drawing.
Robert, you really like furniture, huh?
Yay, looking at lots of furniture makes me happy.
Well, but your drawing is really good, you know.
I've liked drawing since kindergarten.
Ken enjoyed looking at my drawings. We had many days like that, becoming good friends as we both attended tutoring. Around that time, my mom started working as an accountant at my dad's company. However, my dad would come home drunk, citing business dinners and entertainment as reasons. I would go to bed early, but I started waking up to the sounds of my parents arguing in the middle of the night. My mom worked hard during the day and took care of the household diligently, but my dad would come home late at night or even in the morning, and my mom always waited up for him, despite his bad drinking habits. If my dad had just come home and gone to bed quietly, it would have been fine, but he was so drunk he couldn't even find the sink. Watching him, my mom would guide him, often in a loud voice. "The sink is over here," and guide him when he mistakenly headed towards the balcony, while being irritated all the time. Despite hardly sleeping at night, my mom still went to work conscientiously. The arguments between my mom and dad were endless. Waking up at night, I'd distract myself by studying for tutoring and drawing furniture. I often rode my bike alone to various furniture stores. I enjoyed changing the colors of the sofas I saw or imagining the tables in different shapes. Struggling to keep up with tutoring and having to finish its homework, I would go to sleep after everything quieted down. During gym class at school, I often felt sick and ended up watching from the sidelines. But my grades, except for physical education, were slowly improving, Hearing this at a parent-teacher meeting, my mom felt relieved about me, but continued to prepare dinner every night, waiting for my dad's return. Then, suddenly, my mom collapsed. I called my dad and an ambulance, accompanying my mom to the hospital. After she was hospitalized, I visited my mom the next day. Despite the tests showing nothing wrong, she was diagnosed with overexertion. I was informed about this by the doctor. My dad, being busy, didn't visit the hospital. My mom was discharged after about 3 days of treatment, but the doctor advised her to take it easy for a while. I liked shopping, so I took on the task of asking my mom what needed to be bought and would go out in the evening, trying to help as much as possible. Although my mom was somewhat frail, I learned to cook by helping her in the kitchen, gradually getting used to it. My mom took time off work, spending her days resting. She still waited for my dad every night, but he always returned late. After having dinner with my mom, I'd go to my room. I would remember the nostalgic dinners my grandmother used to make. By then, I was in 6th grade and was able to prepare meals to some extent. And soon Ken and I were about to become middle school students. We started studying Spanish at school, which was another difficult subject. But I kept going to tutoring seriously, not wanting to worry my mom. By then, my mom's days and nights had completely reversed, and she continued to take care of my dad when he came home drunk as always. My dad, usually gentle with us, would change when he drank, becoming critical towards my mom. Descending quietly to the living room in the middle of the night, I found my mom crying alone in the kitchen. Unable to say anything, I quietly went back upstairs, careful not to let my mom notice me, and went back to sleep. Occasionally, my dad would come home early and have dinner with us. When I said, "I made dinner today," my dad would praise the food with a smile. "Robert, you've always been handy since you were little." One morning in my 2nd year of middle school, I woke up to find my mom gone. A neatly arranged dining table had a piece of paper and a letter on it. The letter, written by my mom, read, "I'm tired of living this life." The other piece was a divorce form. I understood what was happening. Then, I woke my sleeping dad up.
Dad, Mom has.
My dad slowly got up, and I told him about the letter from my mom on the table. After quietly drinking his coffee for a while, he was seemingly deep in thought. I had to leave for school before my dad left the house. After school, I hurried home and called my grandmother's house in the countryside.
Grandma, are you okay? Is Mom there?
Robert, is that you? Hold on a moment.
After my grandmother said that, my mom came to the phone.
Robert, I'm sorry. I just got tired of arguing with your dad.
That's okay, I understand. I'll come visit you there again.
I hung up the phone quietly. But as I did, tears began to overflow. Then, I went back to my room and opened the window. The cold winter wind entered, chilling my body all at once. I still couldn't accept the reality. I went downstairs and out to do some shopping. I managed to make a simple curry and went to tutoring. I wondered in my heart if my dad would be late again that night. I ate the curry alone at the dining table. Then, I secluded myself in my room again. Ken seemed to notice that I was different than usual at tutoring, although I tried to act normal. That night, he came over to my house.
Robert, is something wrong? How's your mom feeling?
My mom will probably be okay. She went back to her parents' place.
Oh, your mom's parents' place is in the countryside, right?
Yeah, it's a beautiful place by the sea. She'll probably rest there for a while. Maybe she won't come back here.
As I said that, my voice trembled and my eyes grew warm. Ken, seeing me like this, seemed to understand the situation. Being isolated at school, my cousin Ken felt like my only friend at the time. He went to the kitchen and seemed to be looking for something. Then he made me a cup of warm tea. Without saying anything, he sat with me at the dining table for a while before leaving. I felt like I would break if I didn't keep busy, so I went to my room and focused on making a miniature chair. The next day, when I came back from school, I found a stranger, a woman, standing in the kitchen.
You must be Robert, right? I'm Kate, a home helper.
She introduced herself, handing me her business card. I realized she was a housekeeper and politely greeted her, leaving the kitchen work to her before returning to my room. My dad must have hired the helper. With less work to do at home, I quickly finished my homework and the assignments from tutoring. By then, it seemed Kate had already left. The bathroom was very clean. As I looked around the other rooms, they were neatly tidied, and the laundry was folded in a corner of the room. I wasn't keen on going to school, but encouraged by Ken, I kept up with school and tutoring. Ever since Kate came every day, I stayed in my room.
Robert, shall I clean your room?
No, I'll take care of my room myself.
I would decline her. My miniature furniture hobby was important to me, and I didn't want anyone touching it without permission. This continued into middle school, and eventually, the time for exams approached. I occasionally called my mom, who sounded much happier and was pleased to hear from me. Yet, looking at the kitchen without my mom, I couldn't help feeling lonely. Remembering how my mom used to worry about my grades, I began to study harder as rain started to fall outside. The tradition of building model kits with my dad on rainy days had stopped. Together with Ken, I focused on studying for the exams. Somehow, I managed to get into a public high school. To celebrate, my dad bought me a cell phone, and I gave my contact information to Ken and my mom. My mom had also bought a cell phone, and we kept in touch regularly. She seemed to have found a job in the countryside. After that, the emails started to fade. Ken went to a different school, and I started commuting to school alone. The station was close, so even on rainy days, walking was quick enough. The rain washed away the memories of bright, sunny days in the countryside with my mom. It made those happy times seem far away. Even so, I still liked rainy days. Compared to the blue skies at my mom's hometown, the city, even when sunny, felt increasingly gray to me. During my first year in high school, a girl in my class named Mia gave me a letter. She was popular and really cute. The letter asked if I'd like to go out with her, which surprised me. I wrote down only my cell phone number on a letter back to her. Then we started exchanging texts, and Mia and I began dating. I wasn't much for eating out, but we went to movies and shopping, and she even joined me browsing furniture stores.
Wow, Robert, you really like furniture.
Yeah, for some reason, I've always liked it since I was little. I have something I'd like you to see, so if you want, come over to my place sometime.
When I invited her, she happily agreed to come over.
Amazing. What a fancy house.
She was surprised. It was surprising to me since I hadn't been to many friends' homes. But indeed, our living room had quite a few expensive pieces of furniture, thanks to my dad's taste. However, she was even more astonished by my room, which looked more like a workshop, and was fascinated by the miniature furniture I made.
This is so cute. Did you make this, Robert?
Yay, that's right. Do you like it? It's my hobby.
You're so talented. I'd love to have this chair.
Sure, you can have it. I'm glad you like it. I've always been into this kind of thing, even though I'm not great at studying or sports.
She smiled warmly at that. Even when we went out to see a movie, I always found myself looking at the furniture, and she started to take an interest in it too. Our conversation flowed easily after the movies.
The Western-style furniture in today's movie was really nice, wasn't it?
Did you think so too?
Feeling understood about my hobby made my heart leap. Although we didn't eat out much at first, we began enjoying various conversations over meals at diners and singing at karaoke bars. She was good at Spanish and talked about wanting a job where she could use it. I didn't really have any career dreams. I took my studies seriously in high school, even though I quit tutoring. Then I thought it'd been nice to take her to my mom's hometown. When I suggested it, we planned a trip for 3 days during the summer holiday, with her parents' permission.
Robert, you've grown so tall. It's good to see you doing well. And what a lovely young lady.
I'm Mia, currently dating Robert. Nice to meet you.
Oh my, nice to meet you too. What a charming young lady. Please, come in.
My grandmother welcomed us with a smile. I almost cried when I saw my mom, but having Mia there made it easier, especially when I was already a high school student. Like old times, my mom took us to the sea. Mia was moved by the beautiful countryside air and the blue ocean. We were too shy for swimsuits, so we just dipped our feet at the beach. She enjoyed the nostalgic potato salad my grandmother made. She was delighted by the potato fields and green mountains, and was impressed by the architecture of my grandmother's rural home. My mom took time off work for us. The next day, my mom prepared us for the possibility of rain. The weather was clear, but even so, she said to us, the weather in the mountains can change suddenly. As we walked in the mountains, Mia was surprised by the cicada sounds, but then suddenly, they stopped. Drops of rain began to fall, and my mom lent us rain gear. At that time, my mom drove us in her regular compact car, smiling as she guided us to the base of the mountain, where we got into the car parked there. Both my grandmother and mom really took care of her well, making it a fun trip.
It was really fun. I'll come again.
She said that as we left my mom's family home. On the train back, she was all excited, chatting about how nice the countryside is, making me feel good about our trip too. I had no intention of going to college, but she was about to face college entrance exams, so this was our only chance to relax for a while. Our relationship continued smoothly through the end of high school, and she went on to her dream college. My dad suggested I help out at his construction site if I wasn't planning on college. I looked for jobs after graduating high school, but as I was not great at communication, I couldn't find a good workplace and ended up working at my dad's site right away. For someone like me who's not very strong, the work on site was tough at first. A colleague who had been working since right after high school told me sternly, "Hey, just because you're the boss's son doesn't mean you can slack off." pushing me to keep up with the work. After about 3 months, I started to get the hang of it. Aside from talking to him, I didn't need much communication, just doing what I was told. Having gotten my driver's license just before graduating high school, I started driving a small truck early in the morning to pick up younger workers without licenses. I remembered the old days when my mom used to drive a similar truck, which made me nostalgic. I liked driving. My girlfriend, now in college, kept in touch as always, and we sometimes met up to watch a movie. Ken also went to a pretty well-known college. One day, a woman named Rachel, 3 years older than me, appeared at our home. After finishing work and talking with my dad, he announced, "I'm going to marry Rachel." I didn't oppose their marriage. After all, marriage is a personal choice. Thus, Kate, who had long been helping us, was transferred to another household. I couldn't bring myself to call Rachel Mom, so I just referred to her as Rachel. This new living arrangement started, but I just couldn't feel comfortable in this house anymore. The traces of my mom and dad from the old days seemed gone. When I begged my dad to let me move into the company dormitory, he agreed. I was glad since I wanted to live alone. Having cooked since I was a child, I had no trouble with cooking for myself. My girlfriend occasionally visited, enjoying the meals I cooked, and praised my cooking as we spent time together in the kitchen, making my solo living space a place where I could immerse myself in my hobbies. On my favorite rainy days, which were my days off, I would come up with various ideas, drawing new furniture designs. She always enjoyed discussing colors, saying things like, "I want furniture like this when we get married someday." Before we knew it, she graduated from college and landed a job at a multinational company she had dreamed of. I kept living my life cheerfully every day. Even though Sundays were work days for me, she would invite me out for meals on days I finished work early. And eventually, she proposed to me, leading to our marriage. The following year, we were blessed with a lovely daughter. My lonely life was then filled with a family. Since my salary was quite good and she decided to continue working, we asked my dad to help us build a custom home. We lived happily, and our daughter grew healthily from daycare to elementary school. I continued my hobby, but then Ken called me out of the blue. He had joined a fairly large furniture company and remembered my hobby.
Why not design your own furniture?
Encouraged by him, I enrolled in an online vocational school to learn computer-aided design. I improved my skills in sketching and CG. I eventually completed the designs and earned an interior designer qualification. I had been doing well at my dad's company, but one day, I slipped and fell on my way home from work, suffering a complicated fracture in one leg. The pain was unbearable. After a long surgery, I found out I wouldn't be able to walk as before. Unable to work on site with my limp, I was restless, and that was when I was 39. My daughter had entered middle school. I decided to contact Ken. Then, he mentioned that a subsidiary of his company could introduce me to an office job. I took the opportunity and joined a furniture sales company. Walking slowly and mostly capable of organizing documents on the computer, I found myself sidelined, much like a window seat employee, as I passed the age of 40. I was always being scolded by Manager Sanders.
"Hey, Robert, just stick to cleaning the office."
Understood. That was the sort of menial work I was stuck with. I was never great with communication in the first place. As such, I have apparently come off as unfriendly to others. I could hear Supervisor Swan and the other employees whispering, "Really? That guy is useless," and laughing. However, for my daughter and wife's sake, I couldn't quit my job. I was doing my best, creating documents and conducting sales on the computer behind the scenes, unbeknownst to anyone. Then, one day,
Hey, Robert. You're really slow at everything. I understand your leg is a problem, but the staff is having a hard time. You, being practically a non-contributor, are fired today.
At 45, I was suddenly laid off.
Finally, the nuisance is gone.
They laughed along. Well, I'm fired, but what happens to this company is now none of my concern. Fired her, I understand. Thank you for everything. As I packed my things and was about to leave, Director Sock, who seldom was in the office, hurriedly stopped me.
Wait a minute, Robert.
I stopped. Director Sock immediately contacted President Taylor, who then appeared.
Sanders, I had no idea our office was in such a state. Robert has a disability, yes, but did he cause any problems?
Sanders fell silent under Taylor's glare. Then Swan said,
No, but he's not good at communication, and indeed, his work is slow, and everyone is troubled by it.
I had been earnestly doing my work. I then faced Sanders and Swan to express my feelings. I am sorry. I indeed struggle with communication and have this disability. But I didn't choose to be this way. Manager, supervisor, and fellow employees, you all laughed at me behind my back. But I've been fully committed to my work. And now, the future of this company depends on what you, the manager, decide. Please apologize to me right now. I shouted loudly. Seeing the usually calm me shouting, Swan and the others were shocked.
Sanders, and all of you employees don't understand our company at all. And though you are a manager, you don't have the authority to fire an employee.
Sock said that, silencing Sanders again. Then Taylor exclaimed,
Exactly as Sock said. Our company's revenue depends on the patent designs created by Robert. Without him, this company would go bankrupt. Are you all okay with losing your jobs?
Only the president and the director were aware. I had patented all my furniture designs and outsourced their production while handling the sales here.
Patent.
Hearing Taylor's words, Sanders, Swan, and the other employees began to tremble. Taylor ordered,
Sanders, you don't have the authority to fire Robert. But I have the authority to fire you, Sanders. You are fired as of today. Clear out your desk immediately.
Sanders was fired on the spot. While still trembling, he turned pale and started packing his desk. Swan and the other employees apologized to me. Robert, we've been truly disrespectful to you, they said, apologizing one after another. Afterward, Taylor, understanding my communication struggles, called me in and gave me an office. I was appointed as the head of the department. I was shocked by my sudden promotion. I could only express my gratitude to the president. My salary was tripled. Overjoyed, I immediately texted my wife. And when I got home, my wife and daughter had bought a cake to celebrate. Though my mobility was compromised, looking at my family's smiling faces, I pledged to continue dedicating myself to my job, which blends my lifelong hobby with practical benefits. The raindrops sparkling on the window seemed to reflect my mother's smile from days gone by.
You know, those misunderstood guys who applied for the job without any background.
The interviewer said, laughing while fanning his face with my resume.
If you're that desperate for money, try solving this problem.
He began writing a math problem on the whiteboard.
Solve this, and I'll give you $1 million.
He must think there's no way I could do it, having no education or work history. Seeing the interviewer so full of himself, I couldn't help but smirk inwardly. Taking out a notepad and pen, I asked, "Is that $1 million in cash or direct deposit?" The interviewer must have thought my comment was a futile struggle.
Whichever you prefer,
he said with a loud laugh. He didn't know what I was writing on my notepad or what was going to happen to him. I am John Murphy. I'm a 23-year-old and part-time worker. I work at a game development company doing debugging, which means finding bugs in games. Finding bugs might sound cool, but the actual work involves controlling the protagonist to repeatedly open and close the same door, asking the same character the same question over and over. It's just repeating these simple tasks for hours on end. Bugs, in other words, are insects. Debugging originally means removing insects, but as a part-timer, I don't remove them. If I find and bug, I report it to a full-time employee, and my job is done. I move on to another action and start the endless hunt for bugs again. I've been interested in games and computers since I was a kid. Both of my parents are from a landlocked county in the countryside and were always worried about me staying cooped up in my room, playing alone. On weekends, they often took me to mountains and rivers. However, I was terribly afraid of unfamiliar insects and slimy fish. I used to cry and refused to touch them, and my dad would always scold me.
Stop whining like that. What kind of man are you if you can even touch a bug?
I never understood why he got so angry. Whether I'm a man or not, I hate what I hate, and besides, not being able to touch bugs or fish has never been a problem in my life. Once I said that, my dad scolded me more than ever, and after that, we never went out as a family again. As a kid, I was happy I didn't have to touch bugs or fish anymore, but now that I'm an adult, I feel a bit guilty about it. Saying whatever comes to mind is a bad habit of mine. For instance, in elementary school, it was popular among the boys to flip up girls' skirts. The girls who were targeted would get angry or cry, and I just couldn't understand why the boys would do such a thing.
Why do you do something so pointless when the girls clearly hate it?
Because it's funny.
Funny? How is flipping up skirts funny?
Oh, I get it, you're trying to be popular with the girls. If not, go flip her skirt.
No way, that's meaningless.
I was left out by the boys, and girls were more incomprehensible to me than boys. During breaks, they would go to the bathroom in groups on purpose. They would put on makeup before coming to school and get scolded by the teacher. I never understood why people do meaningless or inefficient things. That's why I was disliked by those around me in elementary and middle school. So, in high school and college, I made an effort to speak only when necessary and kept my opinions to myself. I wasn't disliked anymore, but I still felt like I didn't belong anywhere. After graduating from college, I got a job at a stationery manufacturer. I hadn't done well in school, but a company is a place to make money. The more efficient, the better, and I thought if I could be useful in that regard, I would surely be appreciated. Right after joining, I offered various opinions to my boss and seniors. Isn't this process unnecessary? This factory is cheaper and has a quicker delivery time, so it would be better to place orders with them. I just thought it would be good if we could increase sales or make work more efficient so everyone could have it easier. However, I was scolded by my boss and seniors, being told, "You look down on people, don't talk as if you know everything as a newcomer," and I began to receive overt harassment. Eventually, I resigned after about a year, and now I'm doing a part-time job hunting for bugs. It's a boring and dull job, but I think it probably suits me better. Whenever I think and speak up, I end up making others feel bad. I guess I'm just like the bugs hidden in the games. I'm home.
Welcome back.
When I got home, my mom, who was cooking in the kitchen, greeted me with a smile. My dad, sitting on the sofa, didn't say anything and just drank his beer. When the meal was ready, we all sat down to eat.
John, how's work?
It's just normal as usual.
Are you job hunting? You can be a part-time worker forever. I won't be able to work forever, you know.
It's still fine. He only left his last job not too long ago.
It's because you spoil him. When I was 23, I worked hard every day from morning till night.
My father indeed worked harder than anyone else. As a child, there were many days when I didn't know when my dad left for work or when he came back home. Even when we used to go to the mountains or rivers on weekends, he lived such a life, so he must have been incredibly tough even in his younger days. From such my dad's perspective, I must look very disappointing and unreliable now.
John has talent. There's no need to rush.
I don't have any talent. As soon as I said it, I felt embarrassed, like a child going through a rebellious phase. The next day, I was searching for bugs in games from morning. While working, I remembered what my father said last night. Of course, I knew that I couldn't go on like this forever. But I couldn't help thinking that if I started a different job, it would just be the same all over again. That made even searching for job postings online feel daunting. But I knew I couldn't keep saying that forever. It was while I was caught in this loop of farts that an employee suddenly called my name as he entered the room. Yes, what is it? Worried that I might have made some mistake, I hurried over to him, and he walked me out of the room looking more flustered than me and said,
"Your family called. Your dad has collapsed and is in the hospital. You need to hurry there."
"What? Okay, I got it." I grabbed my belongings from my locker and rushed out of the company. Dad has collapsed. Why? What caused it? An illness. All sorts of unpleasant farts swirled through my mind as I stumbled into his hospital room. Dad, wearing something like a blue examination gown, was sitting cross-legged on the bed and yelled at me as soon as he saw me. "What are you doing here?"
Be quiet. We're in a hospital.
I felt all my energy drain, and I slumped into a chair for visitors. "What the heck? I rushed here thinking you had collapsed, but you're perfectly fine."
I just felt a bit dizzy, that's all. I told your mom there was no need to say anything. She tends to overreact.
After that, my dad gave both my mom and me a lecture, almost identical to the one from last night. Watching him, I felt relieved, thinking he looked like he could go on without any issues for another 50 years. So, can you go home today, Dad?
No, they say I need to stay for some tests. I'll be staying overnight.
I see. Well, it's good to get everything checked out while you're here, especially at your age. As evening approached, it was time for visitors to leave the hospital. My mom must have been tired and worried, so we decided to go out for dinner together before heading home. As my mom left the room first, my dad called me back. What is it, Dad?
Take care of your mom.
What are you saying, sounding like a sick person? Let me know when you're getting discharged. I'll come to pick you up.
That's not necessary. Prioritize your work.
Even my dad seemed a bit weaker at the prospect of staying in the hospital. I thought I should treat him to something tasty. I took it easy. That's why I couldn't quite grasp what my mom said through tears at the restaurant. Terminal cancer with 2 months left to live. That was the real diagnosis given to my dad. I've never experienced time fly by so quickly in my life. A little over 2 months passed, and then my dad passed away quietly. After rushing through the wake and the funeral, my mom and I were spending a quiet time together at home for the first time in a while.
John, I know this conversation could wait, but it might be better for you to know sooner. It's about your dad's mountain.
The mountain? What are you talking about?
You remember, don't you, the mountain near our hometown where you went with your dad and me when you were little? That mountain has been passed down through your dad's family for generations, didn't you know?
I indeed remembered driving for hours to the mountain when I was a child, but I had never heard that it was owned by my dad. My mom placed an old, yellow deed on the table.
Your dad said not to pass it on to you, but I think it's better for you to decide.
I knew why he had said that. Inheriting property comes with inheritance tax. I couldn't even imagine how much an entire mountain would cost. I thought about renouncing the inheritance. Honestly, my parents' hometown is pretty rural. Even if we tried to sell it, who knows if there would be a buyer, and as someone who's thoroughly indoorsy, owning it would be pointless for me. I told my mom as much. Then, she said, with a complex look on her face, "There's something I want to show you," and led me to my dad's study. Walking into my dad's room felt strange after so many years. The room was sparse and almost empty. My mom opened the closet and pulled out sleeping bags, a tent, and silver outdoor dishes, one after the other.
Your dad hoped that once he retired, the three of us could go camping again. There are dishes for all three of us. See, he always took care of them on his days off because he knew you wouldn't like it if they were dirty. Funny, right? Considering you're not a child anymore.
The camping gear, although aged, was immaculate. As I looked at them, I found myself crying before I knew it. I felt ashamed for so easily considering giving up something that meant so much. I imagined my dad caring for the tent and dishes for my sake. Crying like a child, I decided I would definitely inherit the mountain. When I told her, my mom cried and smiled happily, nodding in agreement. The next day, I started searching for mid-career recruitment opportunities and sent out my resumes. Considering the future, I wanted a job with a higher income, but I lacked both educational background and work experience. I thought I shouldn't get my hopes too high, but to my surprise, a large IT company I applied to on a whim informed me that I passed the document screening. I wore a suit for the first time in a long while and headed to the company for the interview. The waiting room had a long table and chairs neatly arranged. I had assumed I would be the only one interviewing, but a young woman in a suit was sitting in the corner of the room. I sat as far away from her as possible and tried to relax by taking deep breaths repeatedly. The woman noticed me and turned around to ask, "Are you here for the interview?" Feeling even more nervous around a woman, I managed to say, yes, that's right."
I'm glad. I thought I was the only one and was really nervous.
Whether it's just you or both of us, I don't think it makes a difference. We have to take the interview one at a time anyway. Right after I said it, I regretted it. I felt like I had said something unnecessary again. However, the woman dismissed my concerns with a bright laugh, saying, "Oh, you're right. That was a silly thing to say."
I'm Mary Johnson.
I am John Murphy. Mary Johnson, the woman who introduced herself, was 2 years older than me. She had been a system engineer at another company and applied to this one for skill advancement. I had never spoken to women before, but Mary didn't show any displeasure even when I fumbled, understanding what I was trying to say. Thanks to her, the conversation went smoothly.
Were you SE at another company before, John? Or did you do freelance work?
No. I just made games and apps as a hobby, never professionally. I know all the programming languages, so I thought maybe I'd have a chance. She laughed, saying, "John, you seem serious, but you joke around too." Eck, did I say something funny?
Because knowing all programming languages is quite a statement.
Sorry, that was an exaggeration. I don't know every single one, especially the ones made by individuals. She tilted her head with a smile. I admired her feminine gesture.
All of them? You mean you actually know all of them? I mean, no offense, but there are over 200 programming languages, you know?
Well, I was about to say when the door opened and Mary was called in for her interview. She answered energetically and left the room quickly. About 10 minutes later, a male employee came back and called for me. "Excuse me, may I come in?" Entering the room, I saw 3 interviewers seated in front of me. The men on the sides appeared to be in their early 30s, while the man in the middle seemed to be about 40. He wore a slightly flashy outfit, a brown suit and an orange shirt. He gestured for me to take a seat.
I am David, the interviewer. Don't worry about the 2 people on either side of me. We have a rule that we have to do it in 3s. You know, you shouldn't respond to the interviewer with a huh. Are you here just to kill time?
No, I'm sorry. I apologized quickly, feeling like I had just encountered someone unpleasant. However, I realized the significance of making it to an interview at such a big company without any real background. I wanted to make the most of this opportunity.
So, I told you, right? People who are part-time workers just aren't cut from the right cloth. They wouldn't be doing that sort of thing if they had any sense, right?
The young employee sitting next to him, slapped on the back by David, awkwardly smiled and agreed, "Yeah, you're right."
You're Jack Murphy, right?
No, I'm John.
Oh, right. I graduated from Harvard, you know. I am from Harvard and entered this company, and now I'm a manager. I was managing dozens of employees and running this company. Since I'm conducting your interview, You ought to perk up a bit. I'm busy, you know.
David spoke for a long time alone, boasting about his career, bad-mouthing his employees, and being sarcastic towards me. As I listened, I wondered if Mary had also been subjected to an interview like this from him.
By the way, why did you apply to our company?
I honestly shared that my dad had passed away and I needed money to inherit the land that had been passed down through generations. Throughout this, David was fanning himself with my resume and yawning.
Well, that's quite noble of you. But, land, what's the point of holding on to land these days? You gonna find some truffles or something?
No, I haven't been to that land for many years, so I don't know its current state.
What? And you're inheriting it? Why?
It's something my dad and his ancestors cherished.
Well, bringing that kind of emotional reasoning here, you might not be capable of the logical thinking required for this job. Are you holding onto a mountain for decades without apparent value, continuously paying for something so worthless? That's quite the quirky family you've got there.
Until that moment, I had been determined to get this job, or at least to give it my all right here and now, regardless of the outcome. I couldn't let my dad down by running away again. I couldn't protect what I had decided to protect. That's what I had been telling myself to keep going. But hearing David's remarks, mocking not just me but my dad as well, something inside me snapped. David, oblivious to my change, cheerfully said, "Oh, right.
If you're so desperate for money, why don't you try solving this problem? Solve it, and I'll give you $1 million. That should cover your mountain's inheritance tax. Probably more than necessary."
David grinned as he wrote numbers and symbols on the whiteboard behind him. I recognized the problem. I smirked internally. I never thought such a thing would come in handy here.
Come on, give it a try. Though I doubt you can do it. You can't start anything in the business world by simply admitting something's impossible.
Pulling out a notepad and pen from my suit pocket, I said, "You're absolutely right. I do have one question, though."
What? You want me to tell you the answer?
Is that $1 million in cash or direct deposit? He must have thought it was just a futile attempt. David laughed loudly and said, "Whichever you prefer." This was when I was in my second year of high school. With no friends, I spent every day working part-time jobs. My mom noticed my concern and she said,
Your dad mentioned this competition, thinking it might be something for you, John. Remember, you had good grades in math back in middle school.
The competition she referred to was the Math Olympiad. Indeed, my grades in math were good, but without attending any prep schools, I was convinced I'd fail the preliminaries. Despite that, I was a bit curious, so I searched for past questions online and studied hard until the day of the preliminaries. Surprisingly, I passed not just the preliminaries, but also the first and final exams. And I was even selected to represent the USA. What David had written was the exact problem I solved at the international competition. Although I didn't win the competition, I was the only one out of 500 contestants who solved that problem. I didn't include this in my resume since it wasn't relevant to the job at this company. Even if I had, David probably wouldn't have read it. I wrote the answer to the problem and my bank account number on a notepad. As I placed the paper in front of David, His smirking face quickly turned pale and stiffened. The two people on either side peeked at the paper and let out a small cheer. "Ah, the number at the bottom is my bank account. Since you said I could choose how to receive it, please transfer it. I don't mind covering the transfer fee."
What is this? You cheated, didn't you?
David's desperate accusation made me burst into laughter. As you can see, I don't have a cell phone or anything with me. All I have is a notepad and a pen.
Don't be ridiculous. Who would pay money for you? This is why I hated idiots with low education. Can't you even take a joke?
Isn't it bad for someone who runs a company with dozens of employees to break promises in front of your employees?
Look, there's no way someone with your lackluster resume could ever pass the document screening for a big corporation like this. You don't get it, do you? I have no money to waste on an idiot who can't understand that.
What do you mean?
I only let you through because I thought it'd be fun to mess around with a loser like you. It was all for my stress relief. There was never any intention of hiring you or paying you. If you're that desperate for money, I'll give you some, so just get lost.
David pulled out his wallet and scattered a few $10 bills on the floor. I picked up each bill one by one and lined them up in front of David. Up until now, I've been harassed and bad-mouthed by many people, but seeing you made me realize I was actually lucky with the people around me. I've never met anyone as selfish and childish as you, not even in elementary school or kindergarten. David's face went from red to purple as he pointed at the door and yelled, "Get out." I was planning to leave anyway. I can't work for someone like you. I left the room as I listened to David tearing up the notebook I had written in. The next day, I was holed up in my room, holding my head in my hands. I had messed up. Despite deciding to give it my all without running away, it all ended up like that. I guess simple part-time jobs are more my speed after all. As I lay on my bed feeling down, an unknown number called my phone. "Hello."
Is this John Murphy? I'm William from the HR department of Smith Corporation.
Hearing the company name made me jump up. It was the company where I had gone for an interview yesterday. Thinking of David's face made my heart race, wondering what this was about. The man identifying himself as William said he wanted to hear about the interview and asked me to come to the office. His tone didn't seem like I was in trouble, but honestly, I wanted nothing to do with it. However, I decided to go when he mentioned that Mary would also be there. On the day, I dressed in a suit just in case and headed over. I was led to the same small conference room as before. When I entered, Mary was already there. Across the long table, sitting opposite, was David with a sulky face and a well-postured man in his 50s standing. The man saw me and stood up straight, pointing politely to the seat next to Mary and said, "Please sit here."
Both of you, our David has behaved very rudely. We've asked you here today to apologize and to confirm the facts.
The man who had called me, named William, was this gentleman. According to William, after the interviews with me and Mary, David had boastfully talked about it to his colleagues. Knowing David, he probably said whatever he wanted. This talk somehow reached William, David's superior, revealing that David had conducted a stress interview. I looked at David, thinking he was truly a deplorable person.
We've heard most of the story, but we'd like to hear the details from the two of you. I'm sorry to make you recall unpleasant things.
No, I'm the one who should apologize for taking your time, I said, attracted by William's gentlemanly manner.
I feel the same way as John. Thank you for setting up this meeting.
Mary began to talk about what had happened yesterday. I was shocked by Mary's story. Mary was mocked by David for her work history, denied her character, and made gross sexual harassment comments that even the women in the store at night would rage against. William didn't think it was so bad. He turned his blue face to Mary and his red face to David. Watching Mary speak calmly and firmly without getting emotional was astonishing. Then it was my turn, and taking a cue from Mary, I calmly recounted David's disparaging comments about my dad and myself, and how he said he had only called me in for his stress relief. Midway through, David suddenly stood up, pointing at Mary and me, yelling, "That's a fabrication."
Sit down and be quiet.
Do you really believe these nabodists with no significant educational background over me? They're nabodists.
Enough, David.
William slammed his fist on the long table.
We've received several reports of stress interviews from new graduates. I've also been consulted by your colleagues. I was considering how to address this when I heard about these two. Don't think I am acting without any basis.
It's all lies. They're just jealous of an elite like me and gaining up on me.
William heard this, stood up briskly, and approached David.
Do you not trust these people who want to work for this company and spend much time applying, nor do your colleagues who work hard under you every day? Are you calling them liars?
I was more overwhelmed by William's dignity than David's poo attitude. David seemed deflated, sinking weakly into his chair. William then turned to us.
I am truly sorry for what has happened.
There's no need for you to apologize, William,
Mary said, hurriedly standing up.
No, the misconduct of my colleagues is the responsibility of their superiors. I apologize for making you relive this unpleasant experience. It is entirely my fault. We will deal with David appropriately.
I wondered how David could have turned out the way he did while working under such a supervisor as William. Seeing William's words and sincere actions made me strongly wish to work under him and learn from him.
You might be fed up with us, but if it's all right with you, we would like to invite you for another interview at a later date. What do you think?
I was taken aback by William's words, as if he had read my mind. As I was pondering what to say, Mary asked, could we possibly have some time to think about it? I felt embarrassed but decided to go along with Mary.
Of course. You are both young and talented. You have plenty of options. Please take your time to consider.
Mary might be, but I'm just a part-time worker.
That's not true at all. I've heard from other employees that you solved that math problem. No one else could solve it. You can judge someone solely by their educational background or job history.
William then laughed, patting the slumped David on the back. David nodded slightly. As we left the company, Mary suggested, would you like to grab some tea? Of course, I had no reason to refuse, so we went to a cafe near the station. We got carried away, bad-mouthing David and praising William. I guess I have to be a little thankful to David for giving Mary and me a topic to bond over. Are you going to take the Ray interview, Mary?
I'm not sure. David told me that someone as assertive as me isn't suited for corporate work.
That's rich coming from him. Don't worry about what he said.
But I do see his point to some extent. I do have a strong desire to do things my way. As terrible as his personality and manners are, he's not completely blind to people's characters. So, despite being frustrated by what he said, I'm thinking that maybe going freelance isn't such a bad idea after all.
Despite everything she had been through, I deeply respected Mary for her enthusiasm to turn the experience into something positive for the future. Her attitude encouraged me to make up my mind about what I wanted to do next.
What about you, John?
I've decided to go for the interview. Talking to William today really made me feel strongly about wanting to work with him.
I think that's really important. I will support you.
I'll support you too, Mary. We exchanged phone number and boarded separate trains. Later, I went through the interview again and was successfully hired. When I reported this to Mary over the phone, she was very happy for me. With the greatest nervousness and resolution I had ever mustered in my life, I asked Mary out on a date. She graciously accepted. Then came a whirlwind of days. As a new employee who knew neither right nor left, I was constantly being drilled by my seniors. I also managed to upset clients by saying the wrong thing on several occasions. However, what was different from before was that no matter how much I was scolded, I never thought about running away from that place. No matter how much I faced tasks I was bad at or disliked, remembering my parents, my dad's mountain, and the stash of camping gear in the closet gave me the strength to face them. Mary also taught me a lot about work and handling relationships, and I was both scolded and praised. As an aside, I heard from a senior employee that David was demoted to a regular employee and received a pay cut for 6 months. Additionally, he was made to take the training for new recruits from scratch. Whenever I run into David at the office, he still looks displeased as ever. However, I see this as yet another challenge to overcome and make it a point to actively engage him in conversation whenever I see him. Years flew by in a blur, with no time to breathe, and it was only after several years that I visited the mountain I inherited from my dad. Arriving at the mountain, I woke up my son, who was sleeping in his child's seat. Mary, who changed her surname from Johnson to Murphy after marrying me, laughed at my awkward movements.
Look, Noah, we've arrived at your dad's mountain. Wake up.
Noah, born a year after Mary and I got married, turns 3 today. It was Mary's idea to visit the mountain for Noah's birthday. Holding Noah's hand, Mary and I walked through the mountain. Look, Noah, there are all sorts of insects on the trees. I caught a small beetle and showed it to Noah, but he clung to Mary, shaking his head and crying. Butterflies, grasshoppers, ladybugs, Noah cried, saying he was scared of everything I showed him. I grew increasingly frustrated and scolded him. Hey, you can't be scared of everything. Mary told me off, saying that was not the way to talk to him.
If you're rough with him, he'll only get more scared. Children are afraid because they don't understand what those things are.
Taking her advice, I placed the beetle on my arm and brought it closer to Noah, just a little. It's the unknown that scares him. Indeed, that was true. Look, Noah, you can look from there. It won't bite, and it's not scary at all. Noah watched the little beetle crawling on my arm with wide eyes. In that moment, Noah was just like I had been as a child. Everything unfamiliar or unknown was terrifying. I would always say how much I disliked everything, and my dad would scold me harshly. As a child, I never understood why he was angry. Not understanding, I grew distant and even began to dislike my dad. But now, as a dad myself, I understand why he scolded me. He wanted to teach me not to fear the unknown, not to run from things I disliked. With such an attitude, you can protect what you cherish. What I inherited from my dad wasn't just this mountain. He taught me everything about life. Now, it's my turn to pass on those lessons.